getting there. There's smoke coming off the headers, but that's normal. Hello and welcome back to the garage. Today is a very special day because it is the start of the end of the MGB rebuild. After this video, or at the end of this video, I want to have this car on its four wheels and ready to move under its own power. That is the goal for this video. It might, like, the list of things that I still have to do is getting very, very short. And I might have to spread it over the next couple of days because now it's just a random Wednesday evening. But the goal is very clear. At the end of this video, this car should be ready to leave the garage for the first time and go for a first proper drive. So before we start working on the car today, let's quickly go over the things that still need to be done. So as you can see, the engine is still only, well, partially built. I still need to receive the custom washers for the exhaust and inlet manifold. And once I have those, I can finish the engine bay. The blinker mechanism also kind of let go last week. Again, it's too dark in here, but I can show you the new mechanism. Here you go. So this needs changing as well. That's going to be one of the first steps for today. Then I also need to do the passenger side brake caliper. And then tomorrow evening, probably I'm going to put new brake fluid in and take all the air out of the system so we have brakes again. Then here on the back, this is also going to be quite difficult to see, but there's like a strap holding up the rear axle, but that strap is completely gone. It was a new strap, but it wasn't strong enough to really support the rear axle in its entirety, so it kind of ripped apart. But I have a new one, it's not too expensive, so we still need to put that on as well. And then, basically, the car should be ready. So this video, we're going to do all those things, and we're also going to do a first start at the end, because I'm really curious to hear the car with its new exhaust note, and I really want you guys to be there as well. So that is going to be a highlight of today's video for sure. So let's start with this blinker mechanism. It looks like it's plug and play, but we'll see how easy it is. Like, it looks like these things all just plug right into the factory kind of contacts, but we'll see how easy it actually is, because I have noticed quite a few differences between the old mechanism and the new, but still it should be easy enough. So I'm having quite a bit of trouble with the blinker mechanism, which is what I started with like more than an hour ago. When I put on the blinker, left or right, doesn't matter, the fuel pump turns on as well. And everything works, but every time that I put on the blinker, the fuel pump turns on as well, which I think is super weird. Now, I don't think I'm going to solve this today. I'll have to do some research and come back in a later time. So for the time that I have left, I'm going to try and switch the strap to a new one on the rear axle. And then, yeah, what concerns the blinker mechanism, we'll come back to that at a later date. So I'm working on the back now, and as you can see, this is the new old strap. This was a new one, I replaced this, but it's already broken. And then this is the new one, exactly the same, only this time we're going to support the rear axle so that doesn't happen again, and just needs to go in there. So here we go. And it's in there. That is all the time I have for today, and we'll come back to work on the MG on a later date. Now, as I said in the beginning of this video, the different parts of this video might be filmed on different days, so I'm just going to make sure everything is on there by the end of this video. That's the goal. Another day means yet another challenge. We're back at the MG, and I plan on finishing up a few things today, and I've got everything here on the workbench. So this is a new brake line, and then in here is the caliper. So we're going to refit the caliper. We're going to refit the caliper with new V8 brake pads, which are going to be a little bit bigger. We're also going to put on a new brake line. And then here we have the last bushings that need to go in the front. These hold in the anti-roll bars. So this is pretty much the last thing that has to do with the entire suspension of the car. It has taken, well, around 7 months to rebuild the suspension, but this is, I think, there might always be something left, but I think this is going to be the last part, and well, it's going to feel very satisfying to finish that off today. So let's get started with the brake caliper. Everything should be in here. These are the new brake pads, and then here we have the actual caliper, as well as T-pins, a few washers, and the locking spacer or whatever this is. I think you can see that there's quite a big size difference between the two. The original ones are just a little bit wider, maybe? Not really sure. No, they are not wider, but they are definitely smaller or less large in this area. So I'll start with cleaning this a little bit, and then we'll be back in a minute to put everything together with the new brake pads. And here we are. It doesn't really look like new, but it is. It's good enough for sure. So let's get the brake line as well. So the only thing that's left now is to put the new brake pads in, and then we are basically good to go. that is basically all it takes to put on a brake caliper. It was like 15 minutes of work, pretty simple system. And now the brakes are all ready to be bled and to be filled back up with brake fluid. So that is another very exciting step, and also a very necessary step towards getting back on the road safely. So the next and last step of the front suspension rebuild is going to be to refit the anti-roll bar. As you can probably see, the anti-roll bar is quite thin. This is the stock anti-roll bar, and the reason that I'm refitting the stock one and not going for a thicker one is because I want to get a feel for how the car drives with all its stock suspension components. Because besides the polyurethane bushings, everything is stock on this car right now, suspension-wise, and I'm just curious to see what that feels like on the road, and then maybe in like a few months' time I might change this to a thicker anti-roll bar to get a more stiff and stable ride. Okay, so refitting the anti-roll bar bushes is proving a lot more difficult than I anticipated, and it's not difficult, it's not the right word, it's annoying. Like, there's just not enough play to really put like the bolts in easily, so I have to put a lot of force onto it. Hello and welcome back to the garage on this beautiful day. Not only the weather is very good, but also the progress on the MG is very good today. Now, there's a little setback, but we'll talk about that later. First, we'll have to do the first start of this car in months with an exhaust on there and everything else. As you can see, I just refitted the carburetor, so it's ready to go. Nothing else needs to be done. Everything should be working fine. And as you can see, the custom washers are on there as well. Now, without further ado, let's get inside the car and give it its first start. This is going to be very exciting. I hope everything goes well. I think everything will go well, but you never know with these cars. Okay, so I installed a light behind me so you can see what is going on. Got the ignition key here. Let's prime the fuel pump. Let's give the carburetors a few throttle pedals, and let's see what happens. Okay, that's taking quite a while. Let's try again. We're getting there. What a nice sound. Oh, we just didn't make it. Okay, so that is already much better than what I had before when the exhaust was still, when there was still like a gap between the exhaust and the cylinder head. Let's go again and keep it running for a few more seconds. Still sounds very nice. Still sounds very nice. I love the old sound of the car, but the new one is very good as well. It's very similar, but it might be a little bit more rough. I expect this exhaust to be louder from the inside, so. Okay, now we'll let it run for a second. There's smoke coming off the headers, but that's normal. That's probably just the heat wrap that is just getting a little bit hot and burning off the excess whatever is on there. Okay, that is a major success. The car is running beautifully. And as far as I can tell, it idles perfectly. It sounds very, very normal. It sounds to me as if the engine is running exactly as it did before. So nothing of the settings changed. Probably nothing of the settings needs changing, so that is very, very good. So I'll let it heat up for a while, let the engine get a bit warm, and then we'll try and give it some proper revs. So to me that definitely sounds very, very good. I'm very happy with not just that the car sounds good, but also that the car runs very, very well. It seems that everything is just normal as it was, only it's a little bit louder, so that's absolutely perfect. We also tried to bleed the brakes today, but we had a little bit of trouble with that. If I take you to the back here, we actually experienced a small leak onto the coupling here, where the solid brake line, like the brass or aluminum brake line, I don't really know what it is because it's quite dirty, goes to a flexible line, and that flexible line goes to the rear axle, and then there are two copper or brass lines that go to each brake drum. And on that coupling from the solid line onto the flexible line, I was experiencing a very small leak, and it just made the pressure on the entire brake system go away immediately after we built it up. So that's going to take some, some thinking. It's back to the drawing board on that part. I may have to change the entire line from the back to the front, because as I was taking everything off at the back, I noticed that it was a weak line already. So it's not surprising to me that it's kind of failing right now. And hopefully in a few weeks, we'll get the car back on the road. So yeah, big step today to get the engine running again. And we'll come back at a later point and work on the car again. Hello and welcome back to the garage. I forgot my microphone again, so I'm sorry if the sound isn't optimal. It's been about 2 weeks since I've been here. I've been on a few holidays and I wasn't able to work on the car. I did a few smaller things in between, like the holidays and just throughout the days. But I didn't do anything major, and also I'm still struggling with the rear brakes, so I'm actually just continuing work on that today. So let's take a look at what the mission for today actually is. So the whole reason that this car actually isn't on the road already is because at the rear of the car there is a point where the solid brake line goes over into a flexible brake line to allow for the rear suspension to go up and down. And that connection between those two was actually leaking, so we couldn't keep pressure on the entire brake system, which is obviously a very bad thing. I tried fixing it, but it didn't really work. So I thought the safest and best way to solve this issue was to replace the entire solid brass or copper brake line that goes from the back of the car to the front of the car, and also just for safety reasons replace the flexible brake line. It was a new one, but I think it was quite old, so I'm not sure if it was going to hold multiple years or months of driving. And then the issue which I was facing is actually in here. So this is the point where the brake line connects to, where the brake line that goes to the rear connects with all the other brake lines. But in order to take this off, I need to take a clamp off as well, which is bolted to the chassis. But I couldn't reach that clamp with a screwdriver because the starter motor was in the way. And in order to remove the starter motor, I had to remove the oil filter. So yeah, this was quite, it's not like a major task, but it's just like you're trying to do one thing and then something else comes in between that task, and then something else comes in between that task, and before you know it, you're taking off multiple things again. But yeah, well, it is what it is. So to quickly sum up, the only thing that is keeping this car from hitting the road again and us moving on to the next episode of this series is basically fully removing the brake line, getting a new one made, fitting that new brake line, then also fitting a new flexible brake line at the back, filling the entire brake system up with brake fluid, taking all the air out of the system, and then basically just putting wheels on it and driving it out of here. That should have happened like 2 weeks ago, but then the brake issue happened, the leak happened, and it was like back to the drawing board for a second. So I'm going to continue with removing the starter motor now because I just removed the oil filter, and then hopefully in like 30 minutes I'll have the entire brake line from under the car right here in front of me. Also, this episode is beginning to be quite long, so I apologize for that. I hope you're still watching, I hope you're still enjoying this episode, but I did say that I wanted to finish this episode with the car fully ready to drive under its own power out of the garage. So I'm keeping that promise, and I won't move on to the next episode before this car can drive again. And in the next episode, we will drive the car. Here you can see the bracket which is holding in the oil filter and mounting it to the engine. I just cleaned this, so this is looking basically like new. Pretty happy with the result. And then this is like a new oil filter. Obviously we're going to change this. And this is a new one. And then also, obviously, I did it around 5,000 kilometers last year, so I think it's time for an oil change for this car as well. So the engine is ready for another year of driving. And here you go. It's a little bit difficult to see, but there is actually a brake line here, and that is the front, which all the way goes to the back of the car. So that's from the engine bay around there somewhere, all the way under the car to the rear axle here. So this is a pretty long brake line, and taking it off was not too bad, but I wonder what it's going to be like to put a new brake line on, because we're going to have to bend this thing in a lot of weird shapes to actually get it on there properly, and I am not looking forward to that, but it has to happen, and yeah, I guess we'll do it then. Today is the day. If everything goes well, the car will have brakes again today, and we'll manage to drive it for the first time in a few days as well. It's now just a random Thursday evening. I came here with a friend to fix the brakes because this is a job which is very difficult on my own, because you just need a lot of eyes, basically. But we're finishing up the brake line, and then we'll bleed the brakes, add some fluids, and then everything should be done brake-wise. So we already put the new brake line from here all the way under the car to the back. And here we still need to hook it up to the flexible, which is back here, and then we need to basically refit all these loose wires to the chassis with like chassis braces. So we still got a short way to go, but I think it'll be fine. I think we will be able to do this, and yeah, now the next step is a test drive, and hopefully everything goes well during that test drive. So let's finish up the last few things, and then we can finally end this episode. And that's basically it. After like a month or maybe even more of just fiddling around with these last few things, the car is finally ready. So we are ready to head back, or to head to the next episode where we will drive this thing and put some wheels under there for the first time in 7-8 months. It's been a long time. I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. And well, in the meantime, take care.